Huawei's latest flagship ups the ante where Samsung has recently just done some work. It's Joshua Vergara, what's going on everybody? The camera game is heating up in this comparison, the Huawei P20 Pro versus the Samsung Galaxy S9 Plus. Before we get into the looking glass, the looks of these devices tell very different stories. Samsung has brought some freshness with the lilac purple color, but much of the device is still very familiar. You still have a lot of the elements in the same places, including the Bixby button, but the fingerprint reader has been put in a much easier to access place. But overall, it's that purple color that we really want because it is a little bit unique. Unique color, however, has always been a forte of Huawei's, as evidenced by their previous partnership with Pantone. But the P20 takes it a step further, not only with some modernistic placement of certain elements, but by making a two-tone device. The Twilight Edition is a gradient that smoothly transitions from blue to purple, and we wouldn't blame you for calling it something like unicorn. It also has a glass-on-glass design, but it's with these unique colors that it truly shines. And when it comes to some of the elements like those 3 lenses, which we do get into in our full hands-on, since all of those elements are over on the side, the color takes center stage, which makes it look a little bit like a cool point-and-shoot camera. What does not break up the rear of the P20 is a fingerprint reader, which its placement is different than that of the Samsung Galaxy S9. Huawei wanted to keep some form of continuity, so the fingerprint reader is up front but can be used as a navigation key for tap, hold, or swipe to do pretty much anything that the soft keys would do, which you can turn off in the settings. All of these screens are pretty high powered, but the Huawei P20 and P20 Pro have full HD Plus resolution compared to the Quad HD Plus resolutions of every Samsung Galaxy S9 device. But aside from resolutions, the story here is about that notch on the P20. Now, there is one thing about the notch, it does take up just a small portion of the top of the screen, but you are able to turn it off. Basically what that means is the entire portion up top, where the notch already is located, will just become a black bar. So it kind of gives you an experience that is more akin to non-notch devices, but then again, Samsung has already been able to provide full screen experiences without resorting to things like a notch with its Infinity display. On top of that, the Galaxy S9 does have the curves on the side, that Infinity display, which affords it a few other features like the Edge UX. It's really up to you if the unique screen experiences can go over the unique colorway of the P20 Twilight. In terms of software, you get really full-featured operating systems between these two. The Samsung UI goes up against the EMUI, and though they look pretty vastly different, only Samsung's propensity for putting a ton of features into their phones separates these experiences. EMUI is one of the more full-featured Chinese Android interfaces out there, with plenty of options like navigation docks, dual apps, but on the other hand, Samsung's apps tend to go on top of existing functionality that Google has baked into Android Oreo. For example, Bixby. But the redundancies of Samsung's software is always going to be a contentious point for plenty of users. Under the hood, these phones benefit from the current release cycles with the Snapdragon 845, but Huawei keeps things in-house with the Kirin 970, which is already a powerful processor in and of itself. The Galaxy S9 Plus and the P20 Pro both get bumps up to 6GB of RAM, and the P20 line has bigger onboard storage throughout with 128GB without expansion, but the Galaxy S9 keeps it at 64 with the microSD card slot. Where the P20 line definitely has the Galaxy S9B is in battery capacity. The P20 Pro has 4,000 mAh in its battery, and the Galaxy S9 Plus can only boast 3,500. But all of that finally leads us to the cameras, and there's a lot to talk about here. Samsung's camera enhancements have been pretty well documented here at Android Authority already, so make sure you check out the review and various camera tests. Aside from an 8-megapixel front-facing shooter, the rear lens has been given an f1.5 aperture and f2.4 aperture because of blades that literally give it a dual aperture mode. That is already pretty great and doesn't even take into account the zoom lens featured on the Galaxy S9 Plus that comes from the Note 8. Now we know the camera quality of the Galaxy S9 is pretty great already, especially in low-light shots where it consistently performs above its competitors. But throw on top of that features like the super slow motion and AR emoji, and this camera is definitely one to beat. Huawei just might have done it though, by putting together quite literally every resource at their disposal and making them work in concert. The smaller P20 has a 12-megapixel RGB sensor on the rear that is backed by a 20-megapixel monochrome sensor, but just adding the zoom lens on the P20 Pro, that 8-megapixel telephoto is not the only addition going from the P20 to the P20 Pro. The other two sensors are basically super powered. The monochrome sensor still rocks that 20 megapixels, but the main RGB sensor is a whopping 40 megapixels, and that doesn't even take into account the fact that that sensor is the biggest found on any smartphone. That sensor is even bigger than that found on the Galaxy S9. So all of these lenses work together to get the best possible shots in just about any situation. Thanks to AI-assisted scene detection and photo processing, the P20 and P20 Pro are able to, after about a second, figure out what scene you're looking at and change the settings accordingly, like for example turning on the portrait mode with bokeh effects if it detects that there's a face on screen. But the AI assistance also helps in a critical way for stabilization. Because of the high megapixel counts and the different lenses working together, constant cropping and warping are done to pictures and video. So in low light situations, this all works very hard to ensure that long exposures don't exactly need a tripod. It just needs a fairly steady hand, and it will crop the image accordingly so you still get a good non-blurry photo that happens to have good exposure because of that long exposure you just did. And that picture basically had what is the equivalent of 51,000 ISO. Clearly all the talk from Huawei about their camera is a mouthful, so just remember to check out our hands-on, and we're going to do some deep dives into this 3-camera setup that is incredibly exciting and just might be the thing that actually trumps the Galaxy S9. And so there you have it, our first reactions on the P20, the P20 Pro in relation to the Galaxy S9 Plus. We were already fans of the high-powered and very capable Galaxy S9, including great experiences inside the OS, better ergonomics outside, and a good time with the well-regarded camera package. But Huawei is finding ways to up the ante in every one of those categories, not only with its Twilight Edition, but also with its camera package. We're going to do a full comparison soon, especially doing a deep dive with the cameras, and maybe Huawei's Unicorn could be the antithesis to Samsung's current hit. Keep it tuned to Android Authority for more on the Huawei P20, and also stick around for more at androidauthority.com and all of our properties, because we are, of course, your source for all things Android.